You're listening to Mind Your Trucking Business on TNCRadio.live, where James Rogers, Jamie Irvine, and Tom Kelly provide owner-operators of commercial trucks with expert advice about starting, operating, and growing a professional trucking fleet. It's time to mind your trucking business.
Hi, and welcome to TNC Radio.live, Mind Your Trucking Business. I'm Tom Kelly. We're going to do something a little bit different tonight in that we have a little illness in the team. So we're going to check out a couple of segments from other shows that have been running on TNC Radio.live that I think are very applicable to the Mind Your Trucking Business audience. So some of these come from the Truckers Network radio show. Another is from Highway Fever. I think you'll get a lot out of this. So first up is David Owen with NASTC and talking about some of the stuff that he's seeing and concerns that he has for 2023.
What do you see as some of the biggest challenges and maybe even victories for trucking in 2023?
Well, I think the conversation over the past 4 or 5 years has always started out with the regulatory agencies, and I believe it goes beyond trucking. I think it goes to all small businesses, particularly small businesses, unfortunately, we're guilty. The citizenry, I think, has gotten in the habit of turning to Mother Government to solve our problems. And the truth of the matter is, it's very difficult to solve interstate problems from a central inside the Beltway. And unfortunately, the more the agencies try to help or try to solve problems, the more complex running a truckload of widgets 500 miles becomes.
It really does feel that way. Oh, yeah.
It does. And we don't have a driver shortage. I think people are tired of being criminalized, quite frankly, by the overwhelming number of regulatory requirements that nobody really even understands or knows. I think a good start in turning the thing around would be to make a rule or a law or something that said anything that comes through a regulatory agency or through Congress or from an executive order can't be over 2 pages long.
Oh, I love that. Wouldn't that be great? Instead of 4,000?
Yeah. I mean, how can you? I mean, it's absolutely amazing that they put stuff out like that, and it almost daring you to question the stupidity of making it unreadable.
Yes. Well, part of the reason for that, isn't it? They want to sneak stuff in there that they're hoping you'll miss, and maybe they don't even know is in there themselves.
Well, I think the biggest part of it, and I don't want to bash attorneys, but the biggest part of it, I think, is that we're in a litigious society.
Yep.
And the lawyers get involved, and they try to cross every T and dot every I and anticipate every exception when they write the laws. And unfortunately, that just gets... I knew a guy one time who was very successful. He was a multi-millionaire. Everything he did, he succeeded at. And I asked him one time, I said, what is the secret to your success? He said, I have no idea. We could call it luck or intuition or anything. I don't know what the magic sauce is, but I can tell you one thing. I know the secret to failure. And I said, really? He said, yeah, I can tell you how people will fail every time when they try to please everybody. Yeah. And if you apply that to our government or our regulatory agencies or even our local and state governments, when you try to create a perfect world, you're going to fall short. Unfortunately, there is no utopia. And when you legislate or regulate based on that, you're going to fail every time.
Yep. Yep. What are you hearing from your members as some of the biggest concerns for 2023?
Well, obviously, the cost of everything, the ability to find better paying freight, the obnoxiously high and unrealistic, unbased insurance rates for small carriers or new carriers. They're making entry into this industry so difficult and so expensive that I don't think we'll be able to continue to have good family businesses come into the industry at the rate we have in the past. So I think, as the economy heals, and I think that it will heal throughout 2023, and then there'll be more and more need to haul freight. It's not going to be a driver shortage. It's going to be a company shortage, so to speak. And quite frankly, there's a place for mega fleets, but there's a place for a 10, 15, 20 truck family-owned trucking company as well.
Why is it, Dave, do you think it's so important for some of the mega fleets and those who report on them and talk about them? Why is it so important that they keep saying this thing about the driver shortage over and over again? I mean, I know it comes back to dollars. It always does. But what's in it for them?
Well, it goes back to, Tom, I think, here again, you ask my opinion, you're going to get it. Yeah. I think that the business model of the mega fleets is geared toward growing. And, excuse me, in the trucking industry, the only revenue that's produced is when you haul a load of freight. So the only way to increase revenues and ultimately profit is to increase the number of loads you're taking, and to do that, you have to have more trucks and you have to have more drivers. So there's an unrelenting thirst from the stockholders of a large company to grow that company so their stock gets healthier. So that's what creates a shortage. Excuse me, a lot of the most successful trucking companies I've been able to be around over the last 35 years have been companies that found their size. I met a guy here in Nashville one time. His name was Charlie Brown, and he had 25 trucks. And he said, I can run 25 trucks, and I know exactly how to do it. And his sons got into the company, and of course they wanted to grow the company. They went to 40, 45 trucks, and Charlie told me, he said, I came in one day and I said, we're going back to 25. If you want to have a 40 truck company, you go start one yourself. He got back to 25 trucks because he knew how to do that. So growth is good. Uncontrolled growth or growth that's too rapid is called cancer. And I think that the driver shortage is nothing more than a symptom of the cancerous growth of large trucking companies.
Okay.
Do you believe? And again, this is an opinion question, and it's not like you're going to get buzzed in right or wrong. Do you believe that safety is as important to mega fleets as it is to smaller fleets?
No.
That's correct, sir.
All right, Tom.
Oh my gosh! I thought I'd be wrong. Absolutely, their idea of improving safety is throwing more gadgets and money at it.
Sure.
And the small companies, their idea of improving safety is finding better people to drive their trucks and keeping their trucks in better order and maintaining their trucks better. And it's a total, and not that the big companies don't maintain their trucks, and not that they try to be unsafe. They just, their turnover rates. Tom, if you got over 500 trucks in today's world in the United States, you've got a turnover rate that's north of 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how you can constantly turn your drivers over. And now I know there's a thing called churn, and I know that even if they're turning over at 100%, 75% of the drivers have been there decades, okay? But it's that 25%, and as they grow, that 25% becomes more like 45% because they're adding trucks and drivers. It just, I think, in my world, if I had a utopian idea, I would approach the turnover problem and the safety problem and connect the dots and say, okay, if your turnover rate's over 65%, you can't grow until you get it under that.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
How about you run for office, David?
How about I run from office? How's that? I wouldn't walk for office. I'm much too old, and I swear I've got a guy, Jim Edwards, that represents us in Washington, and he takes care of that. I haven't been to Washington now in several years, and don't miss going up there, quite frankly.
I don't blame you. But you've got a wonderful perspective. We do have to go to break, David. I can't wait to unpack some more information and your insight on what's happening in 2023 in the trucking industry. We're talking with David Owen, the president of NASTC. You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show here on TNCRadio.live. Stay tuned for more coming up.
You're listening to Mind Your Trucking Business on TNCRadio.live.
For the best information source when it comes to trucking industry business news, go to thetrucker.com. From the latest spot rates and freight market stats to who's buying who and who's partnering with who in the world of motor carriers and fleets, the business page provides valuable insights on every aspect of the trucking industry. In addition, the section offers tips for making the most of carrier and driver discounts at travel centers across the nation. Wondering how COVID-19 is impacting the industry this week? Need tips for building business as an owner-operator or choosing the best carrier as a company driver? Curious about the latest news about nuclear verdicts? Find these answers and more in the business section of thetrucker.com. The Trucker News staff produces engaging business content for not only thetrucker.com, but also the Trucker newspaper, which has served the trucking industry for more than 30 years. With a focus on professional truck drivers, the Trucker News staff works to provide content that is relevant, objective, and engaging, pertaining to the trucking segment of the transportation industry. Just go to thetrucker.com or use the TNCRadio.live app to access the latest in trucking industry news.
Welcome back to Mind Your Trucking Business on TNCRadio.live.
Welcome back to TNCRadio.live's Mind Your Trucking Business. Tonight, pulling some segments from some other shows that we think are helpful to the Mind Your Trucking Business audience. Here's Charlie Claiborne and some of his friends from the NADRA talking about some of the issues that they believe all truckers are facing at this point.
Hey, welcome back in, everybody. We've been talking a little bit about the SHIP It Act and some of the stuff in there. I'm going to give you guys a little background, though. So Representative Johnson from South Dakota and Representative Costa, who's from California, collaborated on this bill. Now, that's a huge win. I don't care what side of the aisle you stand on. When two men from two opposing parties can agree they'd like to do something to make the transportation system run smoothly. A little background, though. This is one comment that I don't agree with. No one is going to agree with it. We keep hearing this, and this is part of the background. America is experiencing an 80,000 truck driver shortage, okay? Roughly 80,000 truck drivers, which has a ripple effect for every part of the supply chain. This is one of their background reasons. Number two, the median age of a truck driver in the industry is between 51 and 52, which means these guys are on the way out. Well, we all know. We know a couple of drivers that are well into their 70s that are still out here trucking, and you'd never know. Third thing that is part of this bill, the background is there's one parking space available for every 11 semi-trucks on the road, right? But again, their background says even more drivers are needed. So if they add more drivers, that one spot for 11 trucks is going to grow. They want to modernize authority for certain vehicles and waivers during emergencies. We already do that. The FMCSA extends a rule. They exempt people for propane haulers, people hauling salt, hurricane relief. That's something we've already done. The interesting one is here. Allows truck drivers to apply for Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act grants. It provides tax incentives, which I'm all for, because there is not one person after you've taken your deductions and you have your adjusted gross income, there's not one person in this industry that will not qualify for that $7,500 tax credit. Not one truck driver. So it'll benefit the entire industry. I think it's a nice give me. We don't get a lot back. They take a lot from us in the industry. So I think that's a great idea. I think the tax credit is going to be great for new drivers and old drivers alike. It streamlines the CDL process, makes it easier for states and third parties to administer CDL tests. That one, got to look into that one a little bit more, because I think we already have strict training standards that were recently put in place, and there's a process, and there's a reason there's a process, and there's a reason it takes the time to do these things. And again, it expands access to truck parking and rest facilities for commercial drivers. We want to address all these things. They're all great things. Now, David.
Yeah.
I just read an article that I think all the viewers and all the listeners should go check out, because the bill, which is now HR 471, the Teamsters oppose this act. And in reading the article, the Teamsters claim that HR 471 threatens worker and motorist safety. Y'all feel free to read through this. We're not going to get into it real deep. But again, the union is the first one out of the gate opposing the Ship It Act. So there, you can go to Yahoo News, a couple other places, and check out this article, read this article. David, just give me your overall opinion. You were in the council meeting. We discussed this whole bill. Do you not see this bill as an opportunity for truck drivers to show people what lobbying really is, and how to get more items into these things in the form of amendments, and finally have a bill for truckers that has some teeth and some laws that will really make it better, aside the truck parking and the other stuff? Do you see an opportunity for drivers to work with these two representatives to try to improve this bill even more?
Absolutely. And every one of us should be out there saying, this is a problem that I see out there, and talk it over with a few of your driver buddies in your state, and go to your representatives. Y'all come up with a letter and send it to your representatives and say, look, we want you to work with these two guys. We want to see you sponsoring this, and we would like to see this as well. And that's how you do it. And that's how the NADRA is coming at this. We're going to build committees within our own, group, and we're going to be working to do this so that we can come at this and say, look, you've got a great start, but here's some things that are missing, or here's where you need a little tweak, or you need a little change. But you really got to focus in on what the one thing that you really need, that you would really like to see, that you think would make your life easier on the road when we're out here 280 days out of the year away from our families. What's going to make this better? And yeah, absolutely, this is a great place to start. And I adore it that the Teamsters dislike this.
I'm just going to say this. We don't want to give away a lot of what is going on inside NADRA, folks. That's why we're just kind of giving you broad strokes, because it is a strategy. We are working on things. Jason can testify. Would you say that the breakdown of the meeting Wednesday night put us in a good position to be able to start doing the things that David and I and Ethan and I were discussing? Do you think we're off to a good start with our agenda and our idea?
Oh, absolutely, because we took this bill and we went over it in our meeting yesterday for the very first time, and we literally went over it almost line by line, sentence by sentence, and we're dissecting it. And we're, again, this is a ground floor opportunity, because it's for the first time in a long time that a Democrat and a Republican are working together, and with the new Speaker of the House swearing that we're only going to implement now single bills one at a time rather than adding a bunch of pork to everything. This is maybe the first time for the voice of the everyday blue collar boot on the ground truck driver to maybe get something said or get some change done. And we're taking this new Ship It Act very, very, very seriously.
One of the ways to do that is by, and in my case, for example, culminating relationships with representatives and people that we've worked with. We know who our close allies are in the Transportation Committee. We know who our close allies are in Congress and in the Senate, and we're spreading that around because we're working with we're not going down to DC and just meeting with Republican favorites. We're working with Democrats like Acosta, like Paul Tonko, like, the list goes on, because the only way we're going to get anything accomplished, I mean, face it, there are Democratic members of the House that serve on the Transportation Committee. They all have to work together to solve the problem. And one of our goals was inclusivity, cooperation, and unity, right? So we've taken the same approach to dissecting this particular bill. Truck parking is huge and important. That's why even though Paul Tonko is not on the committee, we've reached out to Paul Tonko and his legislative people, and we're working with them. Why? Because Paul Tonko is the godfather of truck parking. Jason's Law. Right off the bat, you see a man who genuinely cares about his constituents and cared about our industry, because when nobody else cared that Jason Rivenberg was murdered in that truck stop in the Carolinas because Food Lion turned him away, he had no place safe to park. Paul Tonko came, talked to the families, talked to the drivers that were concerned, drafted a bill, and he stuck with it. When it looked like he was getting beaten down, he stood up and he kept at it until it became a reality. He knows the ins and outs of Title 23. He knows about the truck parking situation. He's done the studies. He's seen the data. You want someone like that in your corner when you're fighting for something as important as truck parking, right? So I'm really proud of the council, and I'm hoping Saturday the committees get broke down and we keep moving this ball down the court. Ethan,
Yes, sir.
do you have a good feeling about the direction NADRA is moving with this?
Yeah, absolutely. It takes the collective mind to get together and pull a packet of legalese apart like this and try and break it down into a palpable way that everybody can actually go through it and read it and understand it. That way everybody has a chance to put input into this and actually turn this bill into something that benefits everybody. If we just try and do it with a couple of people reading it over, even as we saw during the roundtable meeting, we had very intelligent people who eat this stuff for lunch that missed a couple of things. So it really takes that collective mind, and us working together like this as a roundtable is one of the best things I think can possibly happen for something like this.
Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. We're going to take our first quick break, our middle of the show break. This is Highway Fever on TNCRadio.live. I'm Charlie Claiborne, your host, and we will be right back after this quick break.
Hi, I'm Charlie Claiborne, and I'm excited to join the TNCRadio.live family. You can hear my show, Highway Fever, on Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right after Mind Your Trucking Business. One quick question. What have you done today to make trucking better for tomorrow? Join me, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right after Mind Your Trucking Business on Highway Fever.
There are many different job boards for truckers. Why use the job board on thetrucker.com? There's several reasons. Thetrucker.com's objective is to help professional truck drivers find quality truck driving jobs and to help trucking companies find quality truck drivers. Thetrucker.com has the most comprehensive listing of truck driving jobs and job resources, and new and existing job listings are updated regularly. Thetrucker.com's job search function is easy to use and allows job seekers to search for jobs by driver type, trailer type, route type, location, company, endorsement, and experience requirements. Our proprietary application processing system, or APS, uses a sophisticated algorithm to match and automatically send qualified driver applications to the trucking company in real time. So your job application is efficiently processed and submitted to the trucking company immediately after the APS matches your qualifications to the job requirements. When it's time to consider making a change, you can find the right resources at thetrucker.com.
Do you have the TNCRadio.live app? It's free and easy to download. Just go to app.tncradio.live, Google Play, or the App Store. Get access to live streaming radio developed by drivers for drivers. Download the TNCRadio.live app today.
Hey, and welcome back to TNCRadio.live's Mind Your Trucking Business. Tonight, putting together some segments from other shows that we think are helpful to this audience. In this segment, Jay Grimes from OOIDA talks about some of the regulatory issues that he sees impacting the trucking industry.
I'm Shelby Johnson with Tom Kelly, and we're talking with Jay Grimes. He's the Director of Regulatory Affairs at OOIDA. We've been talking about the California ban on trucks with engines older than 2010. Jay, you've had some great information and thoughts on this. Personally, I think most people in trucking can see the insanity of this regulation and the mess it's going to cause. I think a lot of people are also fearful that these kind of regulations could spread from California across the nation. Have you heard any rumblings about that, or you think that's something that it's an unfounded fear?
No, certainly we've seen some examples of that. Haven't heard anything specifically related to this older than 2010 regulation, but we've seen certainly over the last few weeks, the EPA here in Washington, D.C. published some more emissions regulations, basing a lot of their rules from California when it comes to nitrous oxide emissions, and implementing a model year 2027 timeline for heavy duty vehicles, that when you talk to the truck and engine manufacturers, they say that's too quick of a timeline for us to meet. And, we can't guarantee that the new 2027 vehicles are going to be reliable or affordable for consumers. And that's kind of a consistent theme that we see from EPA and environmental regulations, and a lot of the EPA regulations are based off of CARB's policies and CARB's rules. So there's certainly a carryover when you look at CARB and some of the federal rules that have been proposed, and in some cases been implemented. And unfortunately, again, we've told the EPA over and over again that when these rules are rolled out nationwide, the trucking industry, for whatever reason, seems to be a guinea pig, and it costs drivers time and money to go into the shop when these newer vehicles with all these emissions technologies break down.
Sure.
And aren't reliable as they should be. I'm afraid that could be the case again here come 2027. And there's some other proposals and I think kind of action plans that we've seen from EPA. By 2050, having zero emission vehicles all on the road, and moving away from gas and diesel engines. And we're fairly skeptical on some of those actions, and really want to see a lot more evidence, and that is achievable by 2050, and if those vehicles are going to be reliable for the trucking industry.
It does seem like a lot of the regulators coming up with these ideas and regulations are living in a utopian world. They don't understand practical application. They don't even understand the industry that they're regulating. And it's so wide-reaching, it just seems like total insanity.
No question. That's one of the challenges we have in Washington in dealing with the 435 members in the House of Representatives, 100 senators, the thousands and thousands of bureaucrats across the federal government. There's not a whole big percentage of them that have real-world experience when it comes to the trucking industry. Yeah. And that's evident in some of these proposals that we see time and time again. That's really where it's critical for drivers out there to contact, their local lawmakers at the state level, their representatives here in Washington, D.C., because we see when these representatives hear directly from the drivers out there who are experiencing the daily challenges, who can, tell their story to the lawmakers, they do gain a little bit of understanding and say, maybe these, overly burdensome emissions regulations don't quite add up and are going to put a lot of people out of business. And that's not going to be great for my constituents back home. So that's always important for us to kind of educate some of these lawmakers who don't know a whole lot about trucking, to give them a better understanding and really try and make them see the negative consequences that these overreaching one-size-fits-all regulations are going to have for drivers, and then the consequences for the economy at large as well.
Jay, in the last segment, you mentioned briefly AB5. Have you, from your perspective, seen an impact yet on drivers in California regarding AB5?
No doubt. The confusion that it's caused for drivers. We get calls in our Kansas City office every day on this, and still not getting a whole lot of clarity from California, perhaps unsurprisingly, there on how it's going to be enforced, which type of drivers it's going to apply to. So it's a big mess. Again, I don't think it's attracting any drivers to the industry when you look at AB5, and there's a lot of legal cases still ongoing that we're involved with, and really, we think AB5 creates a whole mess of problems when it comes to leased on owner operators and independent drivers who don't want to be classified as an employee. And you look at the problematic ABC test that AB5 requires. So that's another one. When you AB5 combined with these stringent environmental rules in California, I don't think it creates a great economic or working environment for many owner-operators and truckers out there.
It doesn't even seem to be clear how AB5 would apply to a fleet company out of St. Louis who happens to have runs going out to California, and they're doing things as independent contractors. It's not even clear how that would apply, is it?
Exactly. When you look at interstate commerce and the types of loads going through California, where the carrier is domiciled from, it seems like a patchwork enforcement and regulation scenario where really nobody knows how California is going to prioritize who they're going to enforce AB5 on, and what types of characters the rules are going to apply to. So again, this has now been a few years in the process where we saw AB5 kind of get enacted, and trucking got thrown into a whole host of other industries. As we know, trucking, especially when it comes to classification of workers, is very unique, very diverse, and it's again not a one size fits all industry. And AB5, takes that approach, which as we've seen already has devastating impacts. And we're still involved in the legal process. And again, another one where California might have to feel some pain before they start taking any significant action to kind of again have some more practical, workable laws in place.
Well, it seems like the Department of Revenue there is really being kind of a big bully. It's impacting a lot of different vocations. People who are out of state all of a sudden get a tax bill because they're a business versus an employee, that sort of thing, and they owe California. Mm-hmm. How is this not in violation of the Interstate Commerce Clause or something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, we think there needs to be some more clear definitions, rules, and more common sense applicability between, what's defined as, interstate commerce versus intrastate commerce. And perhaps if those rules were implemented, that could clear up a lot of the confusion when it comes to some of these tax laws and classification laws as well.
Well, I know a lot of people are saying to heck with it. I'm not going to deal with anybody in California because it's just not worth the headache, Yeah,
that's a familiar refrain, and you can't blame them if that's the option that they choose. And I unless these rules are repealed or adapted to make it a little more easier for small businesses and owner-operators and leased-on drivers to operate in California without all the paperwork hassles, without all the extra taxes and the paperwork, we're probably only going to see more and more drivers choose to operate in different areas or different regions.
Sure. Well, let's face it, people like to drive. They're drivers. They don't want to deal with chasing paper and doing paperwork and filing this and filing that. It really takes the fun out of what they're doing. I mean, you want to have at least some enjoyment with what you do for a living.
Not only the fun and enjoyment, and that's what our members say a lot. They got into trucking. They became an owner operator. To have the independence to drive where they want to, when they want to, and a lot of this red tape, kind of takes that benefit away, and not only the fun, but that paperwork requires time and money, and that takes away from the bottom line for a small trucking business, and makes it real difficult to stay in business.
Absolutely. We have to go to break here again, Jay. This is all some very good food for thought. We're talking with Jay Grimes. He's the Director of Regulatory Affairs at OOIDA. You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.live with Shelley Johnson and Tom Kelly. Stay tuned for more coming up.
Be sure to catch the Truckers Network radio show with your host, Shelley Johnson, weekdays at 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on TNCRadio.live.
TNCRadio.live, your commercial driver navigation station.
Don't forget, you can hear all of our TNC Radio primetime shows again on our podcasts. Just go to tncradio.live/podcasts or search for tncradio.live wherever you listen to podcasts.
You're listening to Mind Your Trucking Business on tncradio.live.
Hey, and welcome back to TNC Radio.live's Mind Your Trucking Business. Doing things a little bit differently tonight as we pull together some of the best of interviews over the course of the last several months. This one, Shelley Johnson and Tom Kirk talk with some folks from 104 DC, looking at some of the issues that truckers are facing today.
I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kirk, and we're talking with Todd Campbell and Joni Sprouse from 10-4 DC. We really got focused on AB5, which is a serious hot topic this year. What are some of the other concerns that your group has that drivers need to know about? I mean, I guess it's like pick one. There's so many things happening this year.
I think that really the huge one we really need to be staying on is the parking issue. Safe parking.
Yep.
I mean, that is the most important with ELDs now being the thing. You're stuck to that clock and you have to stop. So if there's not parking available with states like Joni's from Virginia, and parking is not good in Virginia, there's not anywhere near enough. I have the same issues here. I just run local here in Ohio, and parking's scarce.
Please forgive the laughter in the background when I heard the lack of parking in Virginia.
So you're agreeing, Mr. Kirk? Okay.
Virginia has got for every step forward Virginia takes in parking, they take at least one step back, and it's not always in lockstep. I'll use I-81 as an example. They took out down around Roanoke, Troutville, they took out the TA there a number of years ago, and they did finally expand the Petro up in Ruther Glen, Rafine. And that's great. And they added a whole bunch of parking spots there. The problem is it's still full between 7 and 8 o'clock at night. And they've added how many hundreds of spots?
Yeah. They like to always resort back to Jason's Law. And Jason's Law is a great thing, but there's $0 tied to Jason's Law. There's no money.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you get anything out of nothing?
And you'd think politicians would know that. Without money, they can't do anything. And they are great at spending money, so...
They exactly know it. They know it was a feel good, and it made that poor lady that lived through that tragedy happy that she thought something productive was going to happen, and nothing.
Yeah. So they're just placating people rather than actually doing something that's going to make a difference.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So what can drivers do? Obviously, going to Washington with you folks makes a stand on parking. That's one of the issues. How can drivers get the lawmakers to listen so that there's adequate and safe parking for people?
We've been told for years, from what he does, he's actually not even working there now, but he was the head enforcement officer from FMCSA, Joe DeLorenzo, which he's came to our event every year and spoke to drivers. So that way, they're dealing with the big cheese of our regulatory body, dealing with Joe, because he's about as high as you can get. And he likes to explain things, whether you like to hear what he has to tell you or not, because you don't agree with it, but he tells you exactly what the truth is. He says the comment periods are the biggest thing to do. If they start seeing the activity in the comment periods, lawmakers will need to start paying attention when those numbers increase, just keep going up. And we've had some really big ones. The speed limiter thing, it was huge, the comments that went in on the speed limiters, which I don't think it's even over yet. Lee Schmidt just had filed for an exemption. He's out of Wisconsin, a friend of mine, asking for no 14-hour clock, no 30-minute break, and no 10-hour rest break. The only thing he's asking for is his 11 hours of driving in a 24-hour period. And there's no reason to deny it because he dotted every I, crossed every T when he put in for his exemption. And he is at an 8-to-1 ratio in favor of him getting the exemption on the comments made to that exemption. He's not asking for any more drive time. Just let him break it up however he wants to all day long, every day.
That makes sense. Do you think that could fly?
They don't have a leg to stand on to deny it.
Okay.
I agree with him when he says they don't have a leg to stand on, but personally, I think they're going to find some reason to do it. And I think they're going to probably go a medical route by saying, with some of the studies they're saying, well, he hasn't had a sleep study yet to prove this. And actually, the one thing he said in there, something about, well, he can only sleep for 5 hours at a time or something to that effect. And I don't have the article in front of me. I almost go, ooh, I wonder if they're going to try to use that against him for a medical grounds.
He's hoping they do. he's more than willing to go for a sleep study or anything else, whatever they want him to do. He's good with that. He's like, there's nothing in the law book that can tell me, or that does tell me, how long I have to sleep. So 5 hours, if that's all I sleep, that's all I sleep. It doesn't matter. I still have to take my 10-hour break, but yet I'm not asking for any more than my 11 hours of driving per day, and let me stop through the day and take a nap. I want to stop and take a nap. I want to avoid traffic tie-ups. I want to avoid inclement weather. I want to avoid those things, which is where we've seen some of these accidents where they have risen. That's where it's been. I mean, it's in traffic, it's in bad weather. That's where the accidents come from. It's not rocket science, it's common sense.
Right, right. So that there needs to be more flexibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Shelley, that's one word though I have a little problem with, and even when people go in front of Congress or talk to Congress, I have a little problems with the word flexibility, and here's why. When we were first talking about going from paper to e-logs, flexibility from a lot of the old timers was code word for pulling out their crayons and their pencils and making the pages look really, really pretty in their coloring books.
Mm-hmm. And
flexibility was code word for your fudging, lying, fluffing, whatever term you want to use on your logs. Right. I do think we need to have a broader scope, and I'm not sure what the right word is, but flexibility was kind of a code word for years for the drivers who were a little less than legal in how they did things. Mm-hmm. And I don't like that word because there's people who still remember that, people who go on radio shows similar to yours and say, oh, I can run legal on paper, but I can't run legal on an e-log. And the day I heard that, I swear my jaw dropped and I started bouncing my head off the steering wheel, not literally, while going down the road. And it's like, why did you just say that? And this is a show that we knew people from the FMCSA were regular listeners to.
Oh,
why did you just say that on air? So that's why I
FMCSA says the same exact things to us when they have meetings with us. It's like, we already know what you do. I mean, that's like me. I drive a 1995 truck, so I'm exempt from e-logs. Mm-hmm. And I will stay in that older truck until they won't let me tag it anymore.
I don't blame you there. Absolutely.
And but here's the thing is, I think at the end of the day, and this is the thing, whether we're talking about Lee Schmidt, whether we're talking about the paper, doing it the old school way, like Todd is, all these other things, let's just boil it down here. Let's look at all the exemptions that were done during the pandemic for how many years. I'm at a point now where I think a question that needs to be asked at 10-4 day to our lawmakers, do hours of service in logbooks even have any meaning today?
None.
Because you did so many exemptions.
800 days plus on a COVID exemption right now, and it's still in effect.
Wow. Okay. That's got to be confusing in and of itself.
It is crazy.
It is. And I think that's where it comes down to is, Shelley, is I think intentionally or not, the FMCSA and other groups, so I don't want to say abuse the exemption. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but they did it in such a way where they took away the meaning of hours of service. But you're going to have to get drivers that go in and are careful in how they phrase things when they talk to their congressmen to try to stay away from words such as flexibility. I'm not sure what the correct replacement word is, but words that in the past have been code words for different things.
Sure.
Because we want them to listen to the whole conversation and not hear that code word and tune out.
Be more specific, not nebulous. And I totally agreed. We have about 4 minutes left, and I want to be able to cover everything you guys are concerned about. I think I'll need to bring you back, actually, because we need to get people motivated to go in front of the lawmakers and say, hey, these are things that need to change. What are some more concerns, and how do people get involved with 10-4?
We have a website. It's 10-4dc.org, TENFOURDC.org. Our registration's there. There's a bunch of information there of things we've done in the past, basically how our event goes along. With very, very few rules. Respect everybody that's there. Just, your opinion is important, but so is theirs. So don't be hateful to somebody else, basically. Kind of the motto for our event is, it's not about you, it's not about me, it's about us. I mean, this industry is ours, and we want to make it the best for everybody.
Absolutely.
And the safest for everybody. This is all things we all worry about. Everybody wants to go home to their family.
Sure.
Educating the general public on a lot of these issues might go a long way.
Totally agreed.
Because they don't understand what goes on in our industry.
Yeah, and the thing is, you can't play ostrich. You can't stick your head in the sand, because then it's just becomes untenable for drivers, and it makes things difficult. People want to do their job, but they still have to know what the heck the lawmakers and the regulators are doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, our whole event, I mean, we base this on trying to build unity amongst ourselves. We built a lot of friendships. I mean, I talk to people all over the country, usually about on a daily basis, that I met them because of this event. Mm-hmm. That's how I know them. And we start out in Fredericksburg, Virginia. We rent the fairgrounds there, and that's where everybody meets. If you have a trailer, we have a place to drop a trailer because it's bobtails only to go up onto the National Mall. Number one, think of how catastrophic that would be, trying to take trucks and trailers into Washington, D.C. and get them all on the National Mall. That would be awful.
Yes.
Just the logistical nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
But we convoy in at like midnight.
Right.
On Wednesday night, Thursday morning, whatever, however you want to look at it. We meet up on Wednesday up until 8 p.m. Then we end up getting get pizzas delivered in or something like that. So we got something to eat before we go up.
Mm-hmm.
We got a couple of deals with some hotels. We got a hotel there in Fredericksburg. If somebody would need a hotel room down there, we got hotel deals done up in Washington, D.C. Another thing we ask, we don't care about your truck. I mean, we kind of label it kind of like as a truck show, but it's not. It's whatever you drive, you bring. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a show truck by no means. It could be the average, everyday, JB Hunt style truck, and bring it. Just give it a bath before you bring it, so it looks nice, presentable. Yourself look professional. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be dressed up in a suit. You can be in, like most people wear event T-shirts. That's fine. Wear shorts if you like. Whatever. Just be professional and look the part. I mean, you don't have to be dressed up to talk to the public or even to talk to a lawmaker.
We have about a minute left here. I definitely want to bring you folks back because I know that you'll have more to talk about, and maybe we could educate listeners on the things they need to be concerned about. Where do people find you again? Where do they sign up for this?
Our web, we have all the registration, everything is on the website. That's 104dc.org. It's TNFOURDC.org. We also have a Facebook page. It's 10-4 spelled out, TNFOUR DC spelled out as our Facebook page, and it's a public page. It's event posts only on that Facebook page. We don't let anything else in, so that way there's no drama there or anything silly on it.
This has been a lively discussion, and I know that we can talk probably all day about some of the issues that are impacting trucking, but I love what your organization is doing. And yes, we need to keep our listeners educated on what you're doing and get them involved.
So as you can see, Mind Your Trucking Business isn't the only show where we talk about things that impact today's business owner in the trucking industry. I'm Tom Kelly. On behalf of James Rogers and Jamie Irvin, we'll be back next week on Mind Your Trucking Business.
Catch Landline Now every night at 11 p.m. Eastern Time, along with an encore presentation weekdays at noon, right here on TNCRadio.live.